So here we have Jonathan doing a bent over barbell row, and for this he has a hip width or a neutral stance. He is going with a little wider grip than normal, which is fine. Go ahead and bend over there. He keeps a soft stance in his knees as well as a little more than a 90-degree angle at the hips. He has a neutral spine, and whenever on the concentric, he keeps his elbows relatively tight to his side, which is good, and he contracts his scapula. The primary muscle mover of this movement is the latissimus dorsi, and the brachialis and the biceps brachii is the synergist. And he also pulls the bar nice and tight to his belly button. And on the eccentric, he also keeps his spine neutral and he doesn't sag his lower back. So this is our one-arm dumbbell row. It's a unilateral movement. John has his hand firmly placed on the bench to support his upper body, as well as one knee on the bench to support his lower. He keeps a soft lag in his right and a neutral stance on the bottom. The primary muscle mover is the latissimus dorsi, and the biceps brachii is the synergist. He doesn't allow too much rotation in his shoulder here. He keeps a firm core, and his back is neutral, as well as his neck. And he keeps his elbow tucked in close to his side and doesn't go too high with his elbow either. And he reaches full extension at the bottom. Here we have John performing a seated cable row. He keeps a neutral stance on the platform as well as he keeps his knees a little bent. He keeps a neutral spine here and his head is facing forward. On the concentric, he retracts his scapula, and the lats are the primary muscle mover in this movement, and the bicep brachii and the brachioradialis are the synergists. He keeps a tight core here to prevent his back from rounding. As well, he doesn't allow the weight to pull him forward on the eccentric, and he also doesn't pull his back backward on the concentric. He pulls the handle tight in towards his core and controls the weight on the eccentric. So here we have Jonathan performing a horizontal barbell row. He keeps a neutral, a little narrow foot stance. His knees are fully extended. On the bar, he has a fairly wide grip. This is more comfortable on his shoulders. And at the bottom, he keeps a very neutral spine. His body is completely erect, right? And then go ahead and do a rep. On the concentric, he squeezes his scapula, and he brings his chest to the bar and controls himself on the way down. The entire time, he keeps his spine erect as well as his legs. There's no sagging in his butt. And the primary muscle movers are the latissimus dorsi, and the synergists are the bicep brachii and the brachioradialis.
Michael is performing a pull-up which requires a pronated grip with his hands to be slightly further apart than his shoulders. He is exhaling on the concentric phase, and the primary muscle mover is the latissimus dorsi as it goes through shoulder joint adduction. The shoulder girdle uses the mid and lower traps and rhomboids to perform retraction, and the elbow joint is in flexion as he performs the concentric phase of the exercise. Michael is doing a chin-up which is very similar to a pull-up, except it requires a supinated grip instead of a pronated grip. The same muscles are being worked. The biceps brachii and the brachialis were not mentioned in the earlier video. The shoulder joint is actually going through extension instead of adduction on the concentric phase with the chin-up because of the closer, narrower grip. And that is the only difference between the two exercises.
So this is the bench press. As you see, John has his feet firm and flat on the ground. He has the 3 points of contact on the bench: his butt, his upper back, and his head. He has a wider grip than normal. This is fine. A lot of people do this because it's a little more comfortable on the shoulders. On the eccentric, he brings the bar to nipple level, and then on the concentric, he squeezes his chest, brings the bar up, full extension at the elbows. Primary muscle mover here is the pectoralis major, and the triceps brachii are the synergists. As you can see, he controls it on the top and brings it a little closer to his head at the top, almost in a J shape, and then brings it back down to his chest. Great. So here we have Jonathan performing a dumbbell chest fly. He keeps his elbows locked in the same position, so it's only his shoulder that's moving. He keeps his feet flat on the floor, as well as his tailbone on the bench, his upper back on the bench, as well as his head. On the concentric, his pectoralis major is the primary muscle mover, and his triceps are the synergists. They help his elbows stay static. And he controls it on the way down, and he gets full extension, a full stretch in the chest as well, and he doesn't clink the dumbbells at the top, and he squeezes his chest at the top as well.
The primary muscle mover of the push-up is the pectoralis major, with the triceps brachii being the synergists of the movement. It's a multi-joint exercise that uses the shoulder joint and the elbow joint. During the concentric phase, the lifter should be exhaling, and the shoulder joint should go through horizontal adduction, and their elbow joint should go through extension. It is also important for the core to remain tight and the spine to stay neutral during a push-up. During the dumbbell front shoulder raise, the primary muscle mover is the anterior deltoid. It's a single joint exercise. The shoulder joint is the only joint that moves. It goes through flexion on the concentric phase and extension on the eccentric phase of the exercise, and the lifter should breathe out during the concentric phase. Also, the knees should be bent slightly, and the posture should be straight and upright. Dumbbell lateral shoulder raises are an exercise that primarily work the medial part of the deltoid, and the only joint used is the shoulder joint. It performs abduction on the concentric phase and adduction on the eccentric phase of the exercise. Again, knees should remain slightly bent during this exercise. The posture should be straight and neutral, and the lifter should breathe out on the concentric part of the movement. The last exercise is the standing shoulder press, which requires soft knees, a neutral spine, and a slightly further than shoulder width grip that is pronated. The lifter should breathe on the concentric phase. Their shoulder joint should perform abduction as they use their deltoid, which is the primary muscle mover of the exercise, and the elbow joint should go through extension while they use their triceps brachii to perform that movement.